How's it going, everyone? This is your Astrology Horoscope for Wednesday, August 21st, 2023. I'm astrologer Alex Skyles, and welcome to the Moonbase. Hope you guys are doing great. It's definitely a come down off of this full moon we just had, and as we come into Wednesday here, this moon in Pisces is just coming off of its conjunction with Saturn in its opposition to Venus. So there were some hard lessons with this full moon that definitely were amplified, and definitely a lot of different new perspectives have shown through with this full moon. And I think too, with this moon in Pisces coming off of Saturn today, there can be like this release or this kind of like, a relief of pressure, a sigh of relief. It's like a weight can start to lift off of us. I mean, Venus has been going through it here with Saturn, and a lot of heavy things and heavy situations in relationships, and the reality of the situation within relationships have come up a lot, and definitely some darker themes have come up too, and some things where it's just like, in a relationship, it's like when someone starts feeling distant from you, right? So this black moon Lilith being the furthest point in the moon's orbit here with Venus right here at opposition with Saturn and the moon. It's just like, like sometimes with this kind of energy, it could feel like, emotions or feelings are just, they're distant or they're off, or your emotional state is totally distant from the reality, right? Saturn or, Venus making this opposition with the moon today. Right here, it's like the reality of what a situation looks like now and how it's changed over time. It's just like there is a whole new perspective that this full moon opened up. And of course, this Mars-Jupiter, Mars is now at 21 degrees. This is the first time we've seen Mars in Gemini since the Mars retrograde. Let's think back. End of 2022, October, November, December 2022, as Mars began to retrograde on Halloween 2022. All through November, December, okay, and that was the Mars retrograde that stationed right squaring Neptune, and that whole time period was so wild and all over the place. There's a lot of chaotic, confusing things that were taking place during the Mars retrograde. That was one of my least favorite Mars retrograde periods I can remember. That was a really difficult one. Squaring Neptune, 3 times, I think it was. So I think a lot of what was going on then too is going to start to come up, and definitely I think Mars crossing that area, I think a lot of crazy shit happened during that Mars retrograde in Gemini. So with Mars coming into those degrees where Mars station went direct and went retrograde and came out of its shadow, the last Mars retrograde, I think Mars coming into this place, and we can see how far we've come since that Mars retrograde in Gemini. And I think as well, it's giving us a much more clear look at, it's giving us a clear, maybe not fully clear, but it's giving us a hint like, hey, remember where we were the last time with Mars. Now we're on the other side of that. But here we go. Mars comes retrograde. It's August 20th, December 6th, I'm pretty sure. So, and we still have a ways, but, with Mars crossing these degrees as we're going through these very intense transits and a very intense moon cycle here with these new moons and full moons, and with Pluto, since the Capricorn full moons and Cancer new moon, and now these Aquarian and Leo new moon and full moons. Pluto's been involved with these full moons the past 3 full moons. So it's like there is a very intense transformation that's occurring. And I think we can look back to that Mars retrograde and we can see how far we've come. Because that was a real intense trigger for change. That really catalyzed a lot. And it definitely helped us break through a lot of our own BS. So today I think this moon will square Mars as well. So with this being a mutable moon, a Pisces moon squaring Mars and Gemini, it's like this Mars just wants to fucking get shit done and, really, it just kind of, it's very ADD. This Mars is very ADD. So this moon is just, it wants to, this moon really wants some peace right now. It's gone through a lot with Saturn. It's gone through a lot opposing Venus, and squaring Jupiter, as well. So it's like this, it really just wants a release valve. And there can be a sigh of relief, but it's like with this Mars, it's like there can be this internal kind of voice, right? That wants to externalize itself in a physical way that can start to come up, and that overthinking can get stimulated and it can become physical. It's like when things get emotional or things get intense or emotions get intense, it can be hard to kind of keep it in the can, right? So I think with this moon square Mars here, it can be a trigger point to really not get overwhelmed and not, it's like this Mars can be too stimulated, especially coming off of Jupiter. That Jupiter Mars conjunction was very stimulating, and sometimes it was a little too much, and Venus, of course, involved with this, it's like Venus is going to square Mars here, and there's a T-square with the moon and Mars and Venus. So it's like we have to really not let the reality push us in, or let the reality of the situation where it's like, fuck, now, we have to face this. Saturn is like trying to teach us this lesson. It's now we have to, clear the decks as much as we can so we can make room for more. But there's so much that we have to clear that, it's like we have to go through the steps to actually clear it, or a lot of baggage in relationships with Venus opposing Saturn in this T-square with Mars. It's like, it's like we have to clean out the gutter. We have to let the system flow. And it's like, that's what Virgo is all about, is making sure the pathways are clean and clear so things can move forward. And Mars wants to move forward. The relationships in our lives that really matter and are really healthy, right? They're going to move forward. But the relationships where things get toxic and crazy and weird and strange and weird shit popping out in relationships with these mutable squares, it's just like, of course, with this Mercury Uranus situation that's not over yet too. It's like there's a lot of shocking information that just keeps coming out and, changing our perspective. It's like, I think every single day, it's like some new thing pops out or some new thing happens, and it's just, it's contradictory. There's a lot of contradiction in the chart right now, and that's the thing with Mercury retrogrades and a lot of mutable squares with Mercury ruled signs, planets in Mercury ruled signs during a Mercury retrograde, making these mutable squares. It's just like this moon in Pisces, it's like, I've had enough, just, I don't want any more Earth, right? So, and the sun is just about to come to 29 degrees here, and the moon is going to conjunct with Neptune. So this is very, very important here. So when this moon is about to wrap up here in Pisces, as we come into tomorrow, when the sun comes to 29 degrees, it's going to make a very odd angle to Neptune. So I think too, this sun in Leo is winning here. Neptune has been winning pretty heavily in the chart. It's been very dominant. It's been very strong all year. Of course, it's retrograde right now, but like the sun in Leo is finally, coming into a very odd conversation here with Neptune. It's like, you know what? Like, we can't let the weirdness get in the way of like keeping us from being ourselves and expressing ourselves fully. We can't let the insecurities or, you know, the subconscious weight or the, you know, it's just like the victim, the woe is me kind of stuff. It keeps you in a shell, right? When you get stuck there, and then you can't be that Leo self where it's just, hey, you know, this is who I am. You know, you get too caught up in that internal space or in that subconscious space or in that victim state with this sun in Leo making this inconjunct to Neptune. It's like, you know, it can be very confusing. You know, when you look at yourself, it's like you might see yourself one way when the rest of the world is looking at it completely different. You know, the delusion of like, you know, what you think you really are, right? And we've been going through that a lot with Chiron. And this can be very illusion shattering, but also this can be very helpful to break through blocks of being caught and you know, being caught up in that internal space where you can't even be out here in the world just shining your light. You know, that can be I've seen that a lot where it's like, you know, people have a lot to give and a lot of light to give, but it's all in here and it does no good in here. And it's like, well, you know, it's like, I don't know how to get it out, right? It's like Leo doesn't need to know how. It's like, it just does, it just is, you know? And that's what Leo teaches us. And this very odd angle from the sun to Neptune is wanting to help us kind of rub through that, you know, and it's reminding us of that. It's like, you know, no matter what, you know, what do you have to lose when you are just yourself? You know, you may get canceled, whatever. You know, y'all, when you are true and you're authentic and you're raw, it's always in your favor, right? The universe is always in your favor. So this Sun Neptune aspect here can definitely bring up a weirdness, but it's a reminder to not let, you know, what you think is so overwhelming in here keep you from being your true self out here and sharing that with people, because that is the gift to the world, is your self-expression. That can be an inspiration, because Leo is all about inspiring other people, you know, and I know it's like, oh, you know, he's a Leo, he's too much. It's like, oh, you know, he's too over the top, or, you know, he's arrogant or this and that. It's like, no, it's like Leo is here to inspire, you know, and of course with Pluto and Aquarius, the perception of that is like, oh, it's different. Leo is the rebel right now. So being yourself, being your raw, authentic self is, you know, kind of punk rock in a way, which it used to not be. And of course, when the Pluto Leo people, the John Lennons, the Jimi Hendrix, you know, when that generation was, you know, doing their thing in culture, that's what it was all about. Now it's like Pluto and Aquarius is, you know, it's like, wow, they got to be like us. And if they're too much, if they're more than who we are, then we got to get rid of them. If they're not who we are, then we got to convert them, right? So it's like Leo's just like, you're you are you, I am me. Let's fucking be that all together. So this sun in conjunct Neptune is wanting to help us break through those blocks, you know, because it's like the introvert extrovert. Leo's the ultimate extrovert, right? Pisces being the last sign of the zodiac, and Neptune, the ruling planet of Pisces, is introverted. It's inward, right? When you start going through 12th house transits, it's a much more inward decompression, right? You start having 5th house transits, Leo transits, that's like, you know, that's a compression itself, right? That's more decompressed, right? That's when things open. So in that 12th house, you know, internal space, that's when the compression goes inward, you know. So it's like breathing. I heard somebody the other day, I don't know who it was, recently talking about they're challenging the whole Big Bang, and that it all started with a bang, and it's just now just creating this straight line of time, right? Like it's a straight line. It started here and now it just goes one way, right? I heard somebody talking about, the universe it's not necessarily a straight line. It's like compression, decompression, like a breath. You breathe in, you breathe out. And it's like, that feels more accurate, right? Because we do have these moments where we go more inward, right? We want to be more inward. We want to be more alone. We want to be more private. But then we have these moments where we desire to be out in the world and connect with people, right? Some are more on the spectrum, anywhere on the spectrum than others, but we all have the common thread that we go through these periods, So then, of course, you could track that with with progress charts really well. So it is. It's just this is the last day of Leo season. So we have to go into Virgo season and prepare to really get our hands dirty through this Virgo season, especially with Mercury retrograde. We're going into Mercury retrograde, or we're going into Virgo season during a Mercury retrograde. So, this Venus in Virgo too, this Mercury retrograde in Leo, which will come back into Virgo when it's direct. It's like this is like a cleanup time, and this is like a preparation, because there is a big moment here that's coming towards, once Jupiter goes retrograde, which we haven't felt in a while. That'll be very interesting. And once we get going into December, Mars comes retrograde. There's a lot to clean up. There's a lot to prepare for, and we're wrapping up a lot of things with this Mercury retrograde. A lot of creative projects, finishing creative projects with this Mercury in Leo. Things where you are expressing yourself and creating and sharing and speaking and inspiring other people. It's like, finding ways to revisit things, rework things, if you have to redo things before you're putting things out, it's like, this is the best time to be doing that, and definitely preparing for that Mars retrograde in Leo, which Mars retrogrades are never fun. They're my least favorite thing. Venus retrogrades are not fun either. Mars retrogrades are definitely not fun. So we got the Queen of Wands today. So whenever we're looking out into the world, and we're seeing, what's right in front of us, and the light is exactly in sync with our perspective and our direction, and there's a whole new sense of clarity that, to me, that's come through with this full moon, because it's been such a big, I guess, severance from these past 6 months. Now it's like these past 6 months since Aquarius season, with that full moon in Leo and all the things that have developed, it's like it's pretty official. Like, it feels like official, like that, we've been pulled in so many different directions with these Aquarian transits and Uranus transits, and it's been all over the place. So with this full moon, I think it's just, there's so much more clarity that's come through. And, when the light shines in a particular direction, it's like that's where our attention is drawn. It's drawn towards the light, right? The Queen of Wands with the sunflowers, it's like the sunflower looks where the light is. So it's like, I feel like this full moon has kind of illuminated some of the dark shit that's trying to come into the reality, but also like the sun wrapping up in Leo and wrapping up Leo season here. It's like that big reminder, like we were talking about with the sun quincunx Neptune today. It's like you can't just stray away from that true self and that true raw authentic self of who you are just because, the insecurities of the victim states, or it's like you don't feel comfortable, or you feel like you're going to be judged. The South Node in Libra, it's like, we got to be that North Node in Aries, and we have to be that sun in Leo right now. And that's the message that we're getting today from this final day in Leo season. So that's how it feels. And we have to take that into what we're about to step into with Pluto coming back into Capricorn and this final showdown and shakedown, because it's about to get really wild. So, and this is the cleanup, and this is the preparation for what's to come. And of course, too, I think here's one little nugget I think is really important. That full moon in Taurus in November, I think, is going to be one of the most abundant full moons of the year, and this is going to really activate what that Jupiter in Taurus was all about. And there's going to be so much wildness and chaos going around during that time that we're going to see these pockets of goodies start to really pop up amidst the chaos, right? So I think being ready for that and having that channel open, even though this full moon was really intense, these mutable squares and oppositions are pretty heavy and confusing at a lot of the times lately, this past week, and definitely for the rest of the week as we're going into Virgo season. So, you know, I think too, it's just taking these lessons that Saturn is trying to teach us at this moment with Venus coming off of its opposition today. So I will stop there, and I hope you guys have a wonderful Wednesday, and I will see you all tomorrow. For some reason, hopefully this didn't freeze. Whatever. I'll see you guys tomorrow.